All right. We should be good to go. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Bear with me as I push all the buttons here. Can you all see that? Okay, awesome. We'll go ahead and get started. So thanks everyone for joining us today. We're having our first of two members meetings. So we've standardized these and decided to do a virtual version every spring to kind of standardize our elections and everything. But we'll also have another update for those of you who are going to be joining us in Ogden for the annual conference later this year. So this is a great opportunity to share all of the cool things that folks are doing through AFO and talk about some of the places we're moving towards. So for the agenda today, we're going to make sure we have a quorum. I'll get to that in a minute. You'll hear updates about the AFO grants program and other awards that we have, as well as updates from the journal Field Ornithology and AVANET. So Patrick is going to tell us about all the wild stuff that is happening at AVANET these days. And then we're going to do elections for council before we move on to some updates about our annual meeting and hear a wonderful presentation from Marcella later on at the end of today's program. So I'm going to launch this poll. So I launched a poll there. Please fill that out. I do believe we are already over a quorum, but we need 15 people. And yep, all right, Scott, do you have that?
I have that we have a quorum. What are you seeing for a total?
We are at 23 members so far.
Excellent.
So we should be good. 25. And a couple people who are not members, but we are going to wow them by the end of this presentation, and they will soon be AFO members. All right, 25. Thanks, everyone. Yeah, I can share the results. Okay, last year, Patrick, you gave us a lovely quiz with a photo of a Connecticut warbler, and Julie encouraged us to have more quizzes. So I thought this was a great opportunity to pretty up a slide that had no content otherwise. So here's your quiz for today. Hopefully these aren't too difficult, but maybe some exotic species in there. So what do we have on the screen before moving along? Julie, this is your fault, so I'll let you
Black
answer
neck
first.
still. I'll do that one.
All right.
I'll let
Yeah.
other people do the others. I won't hog it. But this is fun. Thanks, Matt.
Yeah, Meg, Lincoln Sparrow. So that was one I banded just a couple weeks ago at our station in Ohio. And then I bet Igor and Carla know the one on the right.
Yeah, the last one is a whistling heron.
Yeah, Whistling Heron. So I took that photo at the Ornithological Congress of the Americas in Brazil a couple years ago. So great job, everyone. So with that, I will turn it over to Judith and Scott to talk about our grants programs.
Thanks so much, Matt. I'm representing Grants Committee here. I'm going to give the floor over to Scott soon to talk about the Bergstrom grants, but just letting everyone know that in 2024, where we are going to be talking most about the competitions that were run then, we have implemented successfully a number of changes that were approved in 2023. We do ask all people who are considering applying for the awards, new or old, to make sure that they are reading the grant descriptions and eligibility forms before clicking apply. And we this year already completed the Bergstrom grants. Scott, would you like to talk a little bit about the results of this competition?
Yeah, so the Bergstrom grants are with the changes we made in 2023 2023, the Bergstrom grants returned to being just a US and Canada competition, and still at up to $1,500 per award. One of the changes that we made is that we had separate evaluations, kind of separate competition for master's students, undergraduates, and non-academics. All three types we get all three types of applicants, but they have different projects to some extent and certainly different goals with the research. So lumping them all into a single competition was problematic. So we separated that out, had a special set of reviewers for each type of applicant. And that went really well. And we ended up awarding 6 grants in 2024. The 2025, getting my years mixed up. Go ahead and flash the next slide, Matt.
Yeah.
So these are the winners for 2025, and you can get more information on the grants, on all of these grants, and on past winners on the AFO website. Okay, Matt, keep going there.
I'm happy to take over and talk about the 2 Scotch Awards. So we have the Scotch Research Grants, which were previously called the Latin American Bergstrom Award, but they have been renamed. This is a new grant. The inaugural awards were made in 2024, and the 2025 competition is still open. So take note of the due date of July 1st. In 2024, it was extremely popular already. We had 16 applications from 7 countries, and we're able to award 6 grants. These are up to $1,500, and most of the folks who are eligible are in the student status or postdoc stage at most. In the next slide, please, you can see the awards of the 2024 recipients. You can see that they are coming from several different institutions and different countries, and it is really exciting to see always the diversity of projects that are proposed for these grants. So the next slide, please. I'll talk a little bit about the other open competition, the Scotch Keystone Grants. This is the largest award. We have up to $15,000 available per award, and due to increased funding, now we are able to make up to 2 awards potentially each year. The due date for this competition is also July 1st, so still it's an open competition. Eligibility includes anyone who is doing work in the neotropics, whether they are associated with institutions in Latin America and Caribbean or not. So if you're in North America, for example, but doing work in the neotropics, you are eligible for this grant opportunity, not for the Scotch Research Grant. So again, make sure that you are taking a look at those eligibility requirements. Next slide, please. These are the 2 awardees from 2024, and these beautiful pictures and the descriptions are coming from our website. So I would like to invite you to check out the AFO website and reading about the awards, reading about the projects. And we also share results and outcomes that are coming out of these projects. I believe there is a recent publication that has gone up on the website. So it's really great to hear back from our awardees and always receive these notifications about the wonderful products that these awards contribute to. Something that we didn't include in the slides, but I'm going to drop in a link in the chat here. We are always recruiting reviewers. So if you think that you could contribute to the grants program by reading the proposals and helping out the grants committee, please sign up. We are trying to make this an easy and not very burdensome process for all of the reviewers. So the more reviewers, the better. And thanks. I think that's it.
Thanks, Judith and Scott. So kind of continuing on with some of the awards and grants, we have a couple of awards that we give. We have a Best Student Publication Award. So these are for students who are publishing their work in the Journal of Field Ornithology. I'm presenting this on behalf of Diane Neudorf, who has chaired this committee for many, many years now. And I believe Diane is actually looking for a replacement. So if somebody would love to get involved with AFO, this is a great opportunity. And we'll talk more about some additional opportunities in the future. But so Antonio's work was published last year, a year and a half. So this is for work that was published in 2023 and it is awarded in 2024. So this was awarded after our last members meeting, so we're kind of giving you a late update here. So that was in volume 94, issue 2. Encourage you all to check out Antonio's wonderful work, who I believe is still a PhD candidate at this time, but we look forward to additional updates from him as well. So Rafa, I will turn it over to you to talk a little bit about the Journal of Field Ornithology.
Thank you, Matt. Well, I've been an editor to the Journal of Field Ornithology for slightly over a year now. And we have some metrics that we use to keep track of how is the journal doing. The first table that we are showing here is our acceptance rate and the number of papers that we are getting. I think that this year it started slow, but we are back on track now. We think we will reach our average of 90 papers processed this year. Although I think, and I've noticed that the rejection rate is increasing year by year, at least that's true for the previous years. And this year, I think I am doing a lot of desk rejects. I usually spend a lot of time desk rejecting papers. Some of them have chances of resubmission, but most don't. So I just give the authors kind of a broad review and try to help them to improve their paper, and then it gets rejected. And I don't think, or I don't see that these papers will be a good fit for the journal. And well, the second table that we are presenting here is kind of an indicator of how good are we doing in reviewing the papers that actually make the first cut. So we are usually having or handling papers within 2 months cut, which is a very good number, and that's something that we should advertise within our subscribers, because that will help the journal to gain or increase the number of submissions that we get. I think that we are doing pretty good this year, but I think that always is better to have more papers. So if we increase our pool of papers, we get better manuscripts, and that will eventually increase our impact factor, which is something that we are struggling with lately. Yes, is there a question? No? Okay, so I don't know if we have other slide.
Yeah,
I think we have this information on our website. So far last year we published 45 articles or papers. We have some waivers. Most of the authors pay for the full pay charges, but we always try to keep in mind that, or to let people know that the payment is not an issue when publishing in the journal. So we gave 4 partial waivers and 8 full waivers. So I think that Mark D is going to provide further detail into the numbers of the waivers. So I think we have done a good job at waiving people. These were good articles that have a good impact on the journal. So Mark, do you have
yeah, I do. So the slide's up now, so I just summarized sort of revenue and costs for the last issue, or the last year's volume, sorry. It's volume 95. So you can see 33 articles were paid in full, of 45 published, and then with 4 were given partial waivers, and those can vary from like 50% to a third off, depending on what the author's request, and then 8 were provided with full waivers. So every issue, we end up having money left over after every issue, which carries forward to the next issue, to help out with those waivers. So sometimes we'll have 1,000 or 2,000 left after an issue is published, sometimes 4 or 5, but it sort of goes up and down a bit, so that the waiver, basically the program is sort of funding itself with those people who are paying in full. You can see the cost of an article is $800. If you pay in full, you're paying more than that, but so you're helping to sort of subsidize the programs and also pay the EIC stipends for Rafa and Mark Albert.
Great. Thank you both.
So if you need a waiver, request one.
Yeah.
And that process is independent of the review process. So just so everybody knows that, Rafa and Mark reviewers don't know that our waiver's been requested. And it doesn't affect sort of the review process.
Yep. Excellent. Thanks, guys. All right, Patrick, what's going on with ARS?
Oh, it's just raining in Maine here for the last month. I'm just joking. Thank you, Matt. Hi, everybody. It's really great to be here. I have some basic slides that I wanted to share, make sure everyone is aware of kind of the structure of AVNet, which, as you know, is AFO's fully owned business supporting researchers globally with essential field supplies. I want to thank all of the members and executive committee right off the bat for creating the opportunities that we have to work at AVNet and support research, which I think means a lot to everybody, including our staff here on site. Madam, good there. So ARS is managed here in Maine by Biodiversity Research Institute, who's the employer, and that relationship has existed since 2015, when a lot of work was put in by AFO executive members, people like Scott Johnson, Catherine Purcell, Dan Ardia, Scott Sutcliffe at the time, and others to purchase the AVNet business and transition it to BRI. We have 4, sometimes 5 production staff working to make nets each day on site. This year, we've had a little bit of a shift in our staffing structure. And due to a person moving on, we were able to hire a operations and office manager in February. That position, sorry for the detail, but thank you for listening. That position was open for a period of time. So it's actually been really great to have Peter Griffin join us. He's come on board and stepped right in. Some of you may have even ordered and corresponded with him in the last couple of months. So a lot of that shift has been due to some things I'll talk about in a minute. But ARS also works with 2 contractors who are a former employee and longtime worker for AVNet, Don Payton and Tristan Stam, and it's a good relationship to work with them. They work remotely and provide some really nice support. And then the AFO's accounting group, Clifton Larson Allen, works as the sort of third-party accounting group for ARS and is really helpful for all the work we do. And I think importantly, I want to thank the board of directors that Dan Ardia chairs. And Matt, you can shift the slide. I think I might have put everybody here. If I'm missing someone, if anyone recognizes that, please tell me. But I think it's really important to know that while we here are a team working every day, we have some great oversight and input from the board of directors. which includes Matt and Rebecca and Sarah on the AFO Executive Committee, and Dan Ardia, David Sarasol, Bob Hoge, and John Day are former Merrill Lynch folks who support with some great financial advice. And Ryan Heck is somebody he's an attorney who Dan was able to kind of bring onto the board strategically and is super helpful with things that come up, such as when you need to find a lease for a new space, which we'll talk about in a minute. Matt, I think the next slide is good. I do like to present some of the financial picture for the business. And last year was a very strong year for ARS. We had sales over $1.1 million. And that resulted, as you can see, in some profits for the business and a net income of $188,000, which is, I think, great news for AFO. Last year, we were able to transfer $90,000 to support from ARS to AFO to support operations. I think where we live in 2025 is we're navigating some changes. And Matt, if you want to go to the next slide. I think we all watch the news, and we're hearing some just drastic changes to funding and the landscape and how our current administration views science and science funding. But we're all moving ahead and moving forward in a positive manner. In most years, we ship over 1,400 shipments to at least 22 countries. And we know that our products reach other areas, other nations, through being carried over borders and with collaborators. Some exciting news for Avanet is that in August this year, we will be moving into a new facility. This is a really great step in the result of a long search effort to locate a space that will work for us. It's also going to give us some increased capacity from our production side, and it will allow us, I think, to just find some new opportunities and explore some other possible products or product lines. And I guess with that, I always love to ask members and anybody in the AFL community for ideas or things that they need or that they think we could offer. And I think alongside that, one of the things that the board often does is ask questions that I don't know the answer to. And I think that's really, really helpful. Sometimes I haven't even thought of those questions. Other times I'm just trying to figure out what the right step is for the business. And so it's great to not be doing things in a silo here. As you all know, the landscape of funding is changing dramatically. And so we are trying to get a sense on how to plan and budget for the future, especially amid a transition. And, we're observing the impact of tariffs, and we're really trying to do our best to slim our spending on site and make sure that we are able to serve researchers continually. I will say that sales across the board have been very strong so far this year, which is really positive. And we're hoping that will continue, and we're hoping that we can also continue to serve international markets and researchers there as we have in the past. I think that might be where I landed. Matt, I don't know. What's on the next slide? No bird quiz. What?
No bird quiz.
I failed you. I failed you all. But please keep in touch, folks. I hope this is useful. It's probably more than I needed to share, but I'm really happy to thank everybody. And
yeah, thank you, Patrick. And just for those of you who are not deeply involved in AFO's council, I really want to thank the folks who sort of had the foresight to acquire Avanet, and everyone, Patrick and his team, and everyone on the AFO Council for continuing to support this. It's been a really important part of AFO's investment portfolio, and it has allowed us to continue to do the things that we want to do as membership across professional societies at large has continued to decline over the years. So it's been really important. We're grateful that ARS is in the black now, and that we have a revenue source to help do the things that we want to do, like bring our colleagues up for travel to meetings and just get involved in a lot of the important work that we're doing. So thank you, Patrick, and everyone who's involved in helping make ARS tick.
Thanks, Matt.
All right, so we'll move on to elections here in a moment. And I just want to acknowledge our outgoing AFO counselors, or in this year's case, counselor. We have one counselor who is finishing up his term, Gustavo Londoño, who has been on the AFO Council for 2 terms since 2009. He has served to translate content for both the Journal of Field Ornithology and our website, and has been really helpful in not only serving as a reviewer for the Scotch Keystone Grant, but in helping us sort of revive and renew that program and bring it into modern times. So really want to give a shout out to Gustavo for that. And also mention that he himself was the recipient of the Scotch Keystone Award in 2010 for research that he did in Peru on nesting birds. So we'd love to see people who have received grants from us get involved in AFO. So for those of you who have received Scotch or Bergstrom Awards or just interested, take Gustavo's lead here and reach out to us about getting involved with AFO. And he's going to continue to serve with the Scotch Keystone Grant. So really appreciative of all of Gustavo's time. And with that, I just wanted to take a quick moment to thank everyone who's been involved with AFO. As Patrick has alluded to, it's been as you all know, a particularly stressful and chaotic year. And we continue to do lots of really great things through this society. Thanks to all the folks who are on council and who are involved in the various committees. So I just wanted to take a moment to really give a thanks to those of you who are really doing the work for AFO and for our community of researchers. So thanks, everyone. If you are an AFO member joining us and are not involved in one of our committees, please reach out to one of these lovely people here in the photo or on our website. You can find information about each of these committees and all of the work that we're doing. Reach out to us. We would love to get you involved in AFO. So thanks again to you all for doing amazing things. And with that, I will turn it over to Rebecca, who as Vice President is Chair of the Nominations Committee.
Okay, thanks, Matt. So every year we need to go through the nomination process for our executive committee, as well as update the new class of 2028. So those counselors who will be entering to serve full terms. And so for nominations for executive committee, we have these members listed standing from their previous terms: Matt Schumacher for president, myself at vice president, Scott Johnson at secretary, and Sarah Sargent at treasurer. And then nominated to our new council class, we have 3 council members who are returning either for a full second term or beginning a first term after filling in a spot. So those folks are Evan Jackson joining for a first full term, and then Maureen McClung and Huda Ungvari joining us for a full second term. And then we have the nomination of Joey Hubbard, who will be joining AFO Council for her very first term.
Thanks. So for those of you who are AFO members. We're going to have you vote in, I'll activate a poll here. Let's see if I can get this going. Okay, so I'm going to make a motion to elect. I should have done that, I guess, before I launched this poll. The current slate of counselors, so I have a second for that motion.
Second.
All right, thank you, Scott. Lots of people jumping the gun there, so awesome. Thank you for voting if you are an AFO member. And thank you for entertaining my third option there for those of you who are not AFO members. All right, I'm gonna share the results for Scott. Are you all seeing the results on your screen? Okay, do you have that, Scott? I think we've got his back just in case, assume he's there. So thank you. Welcome aboard, Joey. We're excited to work with you. And with that, Rebecca, you can give us an update on an exciting conference that is in the works.
Yeah, so I am, for those of you who don't know me, I am going to be the local host for our conference in Ogden, Utah this summer. So I'm an associate professor at Weber State University, which is here in Ogden, and I'm really excited to bring AFO to my adopted new hometown here. So just a couple of updates. Hopefully most of you have already visited the conference website and are in the process of making plans and getting registered. But just in case you haven't registered yet, we extended the early bird discount until May 26th. So that gets you through this long weekend if you would still like to register and get that early bird rate. You can switch, Matt. Okay, so a couple of things. Again, if you're a member or follow us on socials, which I encourage you to do both of those things, we recently announced the 3 plenary speakers who are going to be joining us. So each morning of the program, we will host one of these 3 plenary speakers: Kini Rossler, Gail Patricelli, and Mark Halber will join us to speak about all of their long-term research experiences. And so we're really looking forward to that. Next. Okay, and then just a couple other bulleted updates. Last I checked, we were gaining registrants still, so we were at 85. And again, that discounted rate is still available through the 26th. And then after, obviously, you can still register, the prices just go up. We have 80 poster and oral presentations that we will be organizing into our scientific programs. We have, I believe, 3 symposia, including bird banding. We've partnered with the Western Bird Banding Association, who will also be joining us for this conference. So they have a symposium. There's an ecotoxicology symposium. Then I believe one on conservation on military lands. Thank you to the appointed rather than volunteer chair of the scientific committee, Evan Jackson, and all of the other reviewers of those abstracts. We recently closed and awarded all of the travel grants. We had far more applicants than we could support, but we awarded over $17,000 in travel funds to help students and early career professionals to attend the meeting. And so thank you to Mark Halber and all the reviewers of those travel grants. Just a couple of things about the meeting itself. We have two workshops. One of the workshops is full. There was a snowy plover modus tagging workshop that had a handful of slots. There is a wait list, and so I do encourage you to, if you're really interested in that, to get on the wait list, as you never know how things may change. But there is still space available in the songbird banding workshop. So both of those are on July 29th, so the day before the scientific program begins. The Songbird Banding Workshop is being hosted by the Western Bird Banding Association, and it'll take place at the Ogden Nature Center. So it'll be, end of July, but we are hopeful that there'll be plenty of birds. They're going to do a lot of focus on, in the registration for that workshop, it asks people to talk about what they'd be interested in gaining additional skills on. And so basically they'll be catering that workshop to the needs of those folks who are in attendance. Our field trips are looking amazing. There is a fantastic lineup of field trips that we're offering through a partnership with a local tour company called Pitted Tours, led by Tim Avery out of Salt Lake City. We just wrapped up the Great Salt Lake Birding Festival here this past weekend, and the results and responses from his tours from that were just absolutely fantastic. Tim's offered us really fantastic rates. All of the field trips listed include transportation. The longer ones include snacks, and some of them, if they are overnight, include the hotel and meals as well. So there is a QR code on the screen here, as well as a link on the website. You do need to register in advance. And again, all of that is done through the wonderful website that Tim put together. These field trips are, at this point, exclusively open to registrants at the conference. So I really encourage you to take a look at some of these offerings that he's putting out. There are 2 morning field trips, or there are 2 mornings on which there are field trips. You will be back in time for the plenary should you participate in those trips. They're very, very close to the venue. So do feel free to participate in those and know that you'll get back in time. And then finally, as you start to plan your travel, there are 3 hotels that have provided discounted room rates for us. The Hampton Inn is the one that is attached to the conference center itself. And then the other 2 hotels are within a block of the conference center. Everything downtown, once you are downtown, is walkable to all the restaurants, bars, conference center. There have been questions about parking. There are free parking lots available if you plan to bring a car with you or rent a car. There is paid parking at the conference facility itself, but there's also free parking available around downtown for you to put your car. We'll try to get that information up for you. There's also a tentative schedule posted. So if you're trying to decide when to arrive and when to leave, that can help you. We will be having our opening reception on the evening of the 29th, and then our closing banquet the evening of the 1st. So I do encourage you to get here on the 29th in time for that, and then stay through the night on the 1st to participate. So we have a couple things left that we are working on. We have some great events, and if you haven't registered yet, I encourage you to do so.
Awesome. Thank you, Rebecca.
Yeah.
With that, finally we get to our wonderful speaker. So I'm going to let you introduce Marcella, and I'll exit out of this stuff.
Okay. All right. Well, while we are switching screens here, I will have Matt exit out, and then Marcella, you're welcome to start sharing your screen. So I'm really excited today to introduce our speaker. So Marcella is currently in the UK, but was born and raised in Miramar, Argentina, and she grew up in a small town along the shore of Laguna Marchiquita, which is the largest saline lake in South America. And so for those of you, hopefully you at this point are aware that in Utah here, we also have a very large saline lake, the Great Salt Lake, and that these regions are very tightly connected to one another, in particular by shorebird migration, which made this connection between Marcella, not only her research, but her connections here in Ogden by having done a sort of student exchange study abroad program with John Cabot, who some of you might know at Weber State University, in which she did spend time here in Ogden for school, as well as doing research on the Great Salt Lake with the very same birds that she was working on down in Argentina. She has her biology degree from Universidad Nacional de Cordoba, and she's currently, like I said, in the UK. So thank you for coming to us a little bit later in the evening for yourself, working on her master's in conservation leadership at the University of Cambridge. And she's worked with phalaropes and saline lakes since 2012, doing work on Wilson's phalarope ecology and habitat use in the Argentine pampas. But in 2019, she moved on to doing a bit more conservation work with Manomet and has been part of Manomet's Flyways team and the Western Hemisphere Shorebird Reserve Network, which connects basically all of the flyways and habitats used by these shorebirds in the Western Hemisphere. And most recently, in addition to doing that master's work, still working on building these partnerships across the Western Hemisphere to design and implement shorebird conservation projects. And so I thought that it would be really nice to have her speak to us about her research on these saline lakes and connect some of these shorebirds that we have here with those that spend the other part of their life in Argentina and other parts of Latin America. So I will turn it over to you, Marcela, and we'll be happy to take questions at the end.
Thank you so much, Rebecca, for your presentation. I'm very happy to be here, and thank you for inviting me to be part of the meeting. I will start my presentation that is called The Flight That Connect Us, Saline Lakes and Wilson's Phalarope. That will be a recurrent topic during my talk. But I also want to talk about the collective action that we are doing across the hemisphere for conservation of these birds and the saline lakes that they rely on. Okay. So I'm going to briefly mention, because Rebecca mentioned already in the introduction, I had a background in biology. I started doing research, but 6 years ago I joined the conservation sector. I'm part of the Western Hemisphere Shorebird Reserve Network team, or WISORN. There is a conservation initiative that we work to protect shorebird habitats, important shorebird habitats across the Western Hemisphere. Currently, we have sites in 125 sites across the 20 countries. So I will invite you to visit the WISORN site to know more about this initiative. This initiative is hosted by Manomet, a US-based NGO, and we are part of the Manomet Flyways program. Like Rebecca mentioned, I was born and raised in Miramar. It's a very small town in the shores of Laguna Mar Chiquita in Argentina. As you can see in the map, Laguna Mar Chiquita is a very big saline lake. Depending on the water levels, we can be the largest lake in the Americas, in the Western Hemisphere. The Great Salt Lake is the other great big lake. We are the largest one in South America. And these pictures are just to show a little about the diversity of landscapes and habitats that we have. It's a very diverse system. We have rivers with fresh water flowing into the lake, creating these brackish wetlands and the hypersaline waters of the lake. So this is an environment who hosts like a lot of biodiversity. It's very, very diverse. So for you, all the people who love birds, I will highly recommend you, if you didn't visit Mar Chiquita yet, that you have to add it to your bucket list. It's a very beautiful place, amazing birds to see. We have more than 380 bird species. It's over almost 40% of the total recorded for the country. Many of them are migratory species. We also have a high number of shorebird species recorded for the site. But I have to say that, at least particularly for us, Wilson's phalarope is our star. Is the shorebird that we have is very iconic and is found in large concentrations in Laguna Mar Chiquita. Laguna Mar Chiquita hosts over 50% of the global population of this species. So this is how Laguna Mar Chiquita, phalaropes at the Laguna Mar Chiquita can be seen from the shore. This is actually a video taken from a phone, but I think this is amazing to see. It's just spectacular to see the big flocks flying and the shapes and the colors, how they change. But just briefly to introduce phalarops in case some of you are not familiar with the bird. This is a shorebird that is very small in size, is 50, 70 grams, depending on the moment of the year. It's really dependent of saline and hypersaline lakes. It's really well adapted, relies on their prey are mainly brine shrimps and brine flies that are they can be found in these environments. It's very slender bird. You can see the thin bill. It's highly aquatic, so it has semi-lobated toes. It's very usual to see them like swimming in the lakes and doing this whirlpool to kind of like bring to the surface the food and picking the food from the surface with the thin bill. That is a very characteristic behavior and it's really beautiful to see too. Distribution, there are long distance migrants, so they breed in Canada and the US, and then they started migration to the non-breeding grounds in South America. But prior to that, they spent time, a couple of weeks, in some specific stopover sites where they gain the way they save the energy to undertake these amazing journeys. They are a polyandrous species, so they have this system where the female is larger, it's brighter than the males, and it's also the male who is in charge of all the parental care, the incubation of the eggs and the parental care. So that's also something interesting about the phalarops. And actually, that picture of the nest was taken in Great Salt Lake, looking for nest. We found phalarop nests. And also, like Rebecca mentioned, although I was very connected with sailing lakes during my life because I born like literally in the shores of a sailing lake, it wasn't until 2012 that I started to work with phalarops, and this was thanks to an opportunity that I had to participate in a summer training in migratory bird ecology with Professor John Cabot from Weber State University, and from them I started my professional career with Wilson's Phalarop. So I think that's a very nice way to see how we are connected among the lakes and these species, how connect us. So like I said before, phalarops love sailing lakes. Within WISRN, this initiative, 3 sites were declared sister lakes almost 30 years ago because they are ecological similarities, but also because of the importance for this particular species. These 3 lakes are Great Salt Lake, there is an hemispheric site. Mono Lake is an international site, it's in California, in the US. In Mar Chiquita Lake, there is in South America, in Argentina. However, the sailing lakes the phalarops love and that we love are under pressure. I'm sure that most of you know that sailing lakes are drying up in many cases. Some of the main threats are related to water management that are used for agriculture, for human consumption. That is also the negative effects are incremented by climate change and of course other activities like human disturbances, industries, pollution. And one of the main threats in the last years is the mining, lithium mining particularly, that is happening in sailing lakes. And all this is affecting the water levels and the habitat and the ecology of these sites, but it's also affecting, of course, the biodiversity and the birds that are living depending on these sites, but also the people, the livelihoods, and sometimes the air quality, like a lot of effects also in the people who is living and depending of these lakes. So just to illustrate, in using as an example our 3 sister lakes under WISRN, here you can see in one picture in the left, you can see Mono Lake and area is holding a pole when it's supposed to be the water level of the lake. So you can see there is still a long distance. They are working in securing the water inflow to the lake. In Great Salt Lake, it's happening the same. The water levels drop in the last years, and actually in 2022, it was the lake reached the historic low, and this is really concerning for the ecology of the lake because many invertebrates that are relying on the this equilibrium in the salinity and the salinity range when they can survive, and the habitat that is being exposed, for example, for invertebrates that are under the water in different stages, are affecting the invertebrates availability. And this is, of course, the food for thousands and thousands of birds. And Mar Chiquita seems to be in a similar situation. Water levels are shrinking, although we don't have as much as information as for other lakes. Everything will indicate that it's also related to the management of the resource of the water, among other things. So I want to mention this because why we work with Wilson Phalarope and why to work at a hemispheric level. Well, I already mentioned that we work at a hemispheric level because there are long distance migrants. So we have to protect every site along the migratory routes or the migratory flyways to be able to preserve the species. And these species that relies on different sites at hemispheric level require us to work in collaboration with partners from across this wide range geography. And this also comes with some obstacles or some challenges, like we have to work with partners with different cultures, different contexts. Language can be a barrier, ways to work, policies. There are a lot of differences that we have to overcome, but it's worth it. We are working with a lot of partners across the hemisphere, and we have to, if we want to preserve long migratory birds. And phalaropes can help us to, of course, can be this charismatic species who connects the saline lakes and help us advocate for the protection of these lakes. So I want to briefly mention what are the actions that we are taking to protect phalaropes and saline lakes across the hemisphere. We can divide our actions in three main areas. Monitoring and research is one of the areas that we focus. Monitoring popular trends at global, regional, and local scale, but also on trying to understand the migratory ecology of the species and combining all this information to identify important sites for the species and be like narrowing down our conservation actions to these specific and important sites. Also, we work a lot in education and building a conservation community around phalaropes, shorebirds, and saline lakes. We have some educational programs like Experiencia Ambiental and Conservation Academy. We try to create opportunities for young professionals and also to engage more the youth with saline lakes and with shorebirds and birds in general. And we also have the International Phalarope Working Group that we co-chair, and it's a group that is really important group to advance the activities that we are undertaking. And finally, conservation. All the things that we do in monitoring and research and education and building this conservation community is because we want to have an impact on the conservation of these sites and these species. So everything that we do is to inform and to support conservation actions on different sites, or even a regional level or international level. So different actions can be taken. It's really important for us to acknowledge and to mention that partnerships are fundamental in this process. Every work that we do, all the projects that we are involved with, we work with partners across the hemisphere, and partnerships are fundamental for us and for achieving our goals. And also mentioning that everything that we do is aligned with the priority actions that were identified in the Wilson's Phalarope Conservation Plan that you can download from using the QR code or Googling. And this document was updated, and the updated version was published last year. This document is a summary of the priority actions and needs for the protection of the species. So it's a guide for our work. Now I'm going to start talking about some of our specific projects that we are supporting. The first one that I want to mention is coordinated phalarope surveys in the non-breeding grounds in South America. So this is the non-breeding range of the species of Wilson's Phalarope. As you can see, there are like two main areas that are important for the species: the high Andean wetlands and the Argentinian lowlands. So in 2020, we undertook this effort, like this comprehensive survey, to cover all the non-breeding range, or most of the sites in the non-breeding range for the species. We were able to survey over 200 sites in the high Andean wetlands of Bolivia, Chile, Argentina, and Peru. And also we were able to survey over 600 sites in the lowlands in Argentina. Based on that, we were able to calculate a new population estimate for the species that it was set in 1 million birds. And this is 30% less than the previous estimate that it was calculated in the 1980s. And there is a paper that is going to be out very soon, hopefully, with this new estimate. And if we zoom in Argentina specifically, we had planned to visit 250 pre-selected sites according their characteristic, the habitat characteristic, previous records of the species, and several other things that we consider. But we ended up visiting over 600 sites, and this was because an amazing volunteer network, and also because we partnered with other initiatives like the Neotropical Waterbird Survey. So we were able to cover a lot of the Argentina lowlands. And however, as you can see in the map on the right, phalaropes are highly congregated in only a few sites. And even like all these points, many of these points, there were only a couple of phalaropes, maybe a couple of tens of phalaropes, but only in a few sites there were high abundances of phalaropes, showing this tendency of the species to rely on some very key specific sites during the non-breeding season and during their whole life cycle. And in 2025, we repeated this effort because we tried to have we had this first picture of what is happening and what is the population size and what are the important sites for the species. So we tried to do again this effort 5 years later. And we just finished the survey last February. We don't have the data yet for this survey, the full set of data, but more than 700 sites were visited in total in the high Andes and the lowlands in Argentina. But I do want to mention that for Argentina, the preliminary data is a little less than 500 sites. But as you can see here, the pattern is very, very similar. So that's very interesting. So we were able to visit a lot of sites, but the phalaropes are still congregating in very few specific sites, and the sites are the same. So this is a very useful big picture to understand what are the sites that we need to focus on. The survey was an amazing opportunity not only for gathering information for these species and also for the sites, but it was also a great opportunity to expand our volunteer network, to engage more people with citizen science, to shorebirds, to Wilson's phalarope in particular, and with saline lakes too. So we work with them, and for example, it was a great opportunity to train people in survey methodologies or in shorebird ID, or even many of our volunteers didn't know how to use eBird, so they were out of the field, but they don't have they didn't use the app very often, so we trained them in how to use the app. So it's a very good opportunity to build this community and to build this support. And it's not only important for building this community and like gathering this information for phalaropes specifically, but also our volunteers are recording every bird that they see. So these are some of the pictures from our volunteers on field. So a lot of information from shorebirds and other water birds is being collected during these comprehensive efforts and is helping to understand better the bird distribution and abundances in the country. So this is also something really good about this surveys. Now we are going to zoom in a little, and going from these regional efforts are going to these specific sites in a regional scale, but at a country level. So we decided starting this last summer to do comprehensive simultaneous surveys of Wilson's phalarope in 4 key sites, actually in 3 key sites, because Laguna Mar Chiquita, I will share later that we conduct these surveys for longer time. But since last year, we are doing these surveys in a monthly basis in the spring and summer season during the same week, the same window time. And the idea is to have like a snapshot regionally of what is happening with flare-ups in these sites that we already identified that are important for the species. So as you can see here in the map, in order from the north to the south is Laguna de los Pozuelos. This is actually a high Andean saline lake. And then we have Laguna Mar Chiquita, and then Laguna La Picasa area in southern Santa Fe, and finally in Buenos Aires province, Lago Epecua. These are the results for the first season of surveys, and it's too early to draw conclusions, but at least we can start seeing some patterns, and this information is really interesting for us to start thinking and what are the drivers behind these differences in the counts and what can be the reason of doing these changes. And for example, here you can see that Laguna de los Pozuelos didn't have high counts prior to February, but in February the number was really high, and while in the other sites the number was low. Laguna de los Pozuelos is the northern side of the 4 sites, so maybe this is related to movements related to the beginning of the migration to the north. So this is the kind of information that we want to obtain from these regional surveys, how these sites and these areas are connected and how the flare-ups are moving between sites. And now we're going to zoom in a little more, and we're going to see what the work that we are supporting at Laguna Mar Chiquita, this really big lake that it can only be surveyed by air because of the size, but also because how accessible many parts of the lakes are. Here you see our team in the field. They are doing these aerial surveys in a monthly basis, and these surveys are on the same window time that the surveys that I just mentioned. And basically, the surveys can take 3.5 or up to 4 hours to going all around the perimeter of the lake. And this track is divided in different transects or different sectors. And for each one of these sectors, we obtain flare-up abundances, and then we have a total estimate for the whole lake. This is the fifth season that we are conducting or supporting these surveys at Laguna Mar Chiquita. That is a picture of how you can see the flux from the air, and they are mixed with flare-ups here in South America. And here are some of the results of these abundances. And you can see that between different seasons is really variable. So a lot of variability. It's hard to say there is a trend or what is happening with flare-ups based on this graphic. But this is also why we decided to kind of zoom out a little and start doing these regional surveys to understand what is happening at a regional level and how flare-ups use the landscape and not only the sites. What we can say about these surveys is where flare-ups likes to be in Mar Chiquita, where is the habitat that they prefer, the distribution. So as you can see in the map, flare-ups are like in the shores, in shallow waters. And from the map on the left, you will think that they are in the middle of the lake, but no, if you see the satellite image, they are on the shores. The big numbers are mainly in the north part of the lake. This is very inaccessible. You cannot drive, you cannot walk. It's very muddy, shallow water. Usually they share this space with Chilean flamingos and the breeding season. They are in the breeding season, the flamingos. So all this information is really important to understand habitat use at Laguna Mar Chiquita. Here I wanna make a parenthesis and mention that we have partners working in North America conducting coordinated Wilson's flare-up surveys at specific key staging sites at six major sites in North America, including Chaplin Lakes in Canada and Lake Albert, Great Salt Lake, Owens Lake, Mono Lake, and San Francisco Bay. These surveys are conducted by all the partners that are mentioned here, and the regional effort is coordinated by Ryan Carl. So you have the contact here in case you are interested for more detailed information. But I wanted to mention this because these surveys are also being made during the same window time in these different sites to have like a regional picture of what is happening with flare-ups. And when we see the information and we compare that data with the counts at Laguna Mar Chiquita, we see something interesting that is the same trend is in general happening in Mar Chiquita if we compare with the high counts in the North American sites combined. Although we have a big gap in the counts, and we still don't know exactly what can explain that gap. One of the reasons can be that estimating birds in these big lakes like Great Salt Lake and Laguna Mar Chiquita is very difficult. The surveys are made by air, and only a few people is trained to do these estimations. So that's why we are working very closely with partners from Great Salt Lake, from the Utah Division of Wildlife Resources. They are undertaking the surveys in Great Salt Lake. They have a lot of experience, and we were able to invite them to come to Mar Chiquita, and they were able to fly over the lake and understand the landscape, the habitat, and how phalaropes behave, and to have like a better idea of how phalaropes are used in Mar Chiquita. And then after the flight, they had several meetings with our local team, and they were able to exchange ideas, to exchange knowledge, recommendations. We are trying to standardize the methodology as much as I can. Of course, the lakes are not exactly the same, so there are a lot of similarities, but there is also some challenges in standardizing methodology. But this is very, very important for us. This is the power of partnerships and learning and supporting partners across the hemisphere to improve our methodology and our results. Another project that we have that is related to the aerial surveys, but is at Laguna Mar Chiquita, but it's focused on the pelagic part of the lake, is boat surveys, because phalaropes, like I mentioned at the beginning, are highly aquatic, so they can use the pelagic area of the lakes. So we wanted to see at Laguna Mar Chiquita if we were missing big flocks when flying over the perimeter of the lake. And we are conducting these boat surveys at the same day, at the same time that the plane is flying in the perimeter of the lake. And so far, no significant numbers of Wilson's phalarope were identified in any of the surveys. But we are using these surveys, these boat trips, also as an opportunity to take samples of water in the pelagic area of the lake in specific points. And we are working in collaboration with partners from the Utah Water Science Center, from the U.S. Geological Survey. We're shipping the samples there, and they are analyzing the salinity, the type of water, and also this is aimed to understand if there are changes in the salinity between the different seasons and in the chemical composition of the water, to understand how that can be related to changes in the invertebrates or in the phalaropes habitat use, like the distribution and how they use the lake. All this information that we are gathering, all these projects that we are supporting, we are conducting in the field, are aimed to support the conservation of the sites that are important for the birds. So everything that we learn, every information that we generate, we work very closely, particularly in Mar Chiquita case, we work very closely with the authorities of the protected areas. Mar Chiquita was recently, 3 years ago, declared as a national park. And there is also a provincial reserve, and both protected areas are working in the management plan for the areas. So we are working very closely with them. They are part of our surveys. We have a good relationship, and we are trying to support with our technical skills, with the knowledge, all these conservation actions and the planning of the management of the area. Okay, now I'm going to move to a different project that is related to tracking phalarope movements across the Western Hemisphere. This is a project that we have with an international team of Canada, the US, and Argentina. And we are working together to understand migratory ecology, migratory connectivity, and site use for the species at key sites in the Western Hemisphere. 2023 was a big year because the first Wilson's phalarope were tagged in North America. For us in South America, 2025 was a great year. Just a couple of months ago, my colleague Pablo here in the picture and a team of international researchers from Canada and from Argentina too. They were conducting field work during summer season in January, and they were able to catch and tag the first 8 phalaropes at Laguna Mar Chiquita. So this was a major milestone for us, being able to tag the first individuals at Laguna Mar Chiquita. Part of this project is also expand the network of receivers for these radio tags, because in North America, Motus network is really well established and is a lot of receivers are deployed. But in South America, it's really different. We have only a few of them. So we are working to grow that network, and particularly at Laguna Mar Chiquita. And we already have our first station. It's a dual station and is fully functional now. And we are also using mobile antennas that we attach at every side of the plane. And during the aerial surveys, these antennas are attached to the plane. Part of this project is not only expand the network, but also like tagging the phalaropes and all these techniques, like how to trap the phalaropes, how to tag the phalaropes, how to deploy the harnesses. Learning how to do all these things is also a very important component. We are also fostering the connections between the partners to support each other in these techniques. So for example, we had training in harnesses deployment from partners from Mono Lake, from partners from Chaplin Lakes. And this is a project that is projected to continue in the future. So we have a new tagging subcommittee in the International Phalarop Working Group that is brand new, and basically is to discuss and to learn from people who has experience or interest in tagging and tracking phalaropes. So all of you are welcome to join us if you are interested. And we are so excited to start having the first results after so much work, and this collective effort at the hemispheric level is it's very nice to see the results, the birds that are tagged, for example, in the US, in California, and then are detected at Laguna Mar Chiquita. In some cases, we can see detections in Ecuador. In Ecuador, there is another important site for phalaropes in South America, and we are in contact with all these partners, and we're very happy every time that we find a new record of phalaropes. For example, the last one, it's new, so we just find out about this record, and we were really happy to know that one of the birds that was tagged at Laguna Mar Chiquita was detected in Nebraska only a couple of days ago. So that's also something great. And all this data that is going to be generated is going to be analyzed to understand better migratory connectivity and migratory ecology of the species. And this is the last project that I want to share with you related to research and monitoring. There is understanding the impact of lithium mining in the high Andean wetlands of Argentina, Chile, and Bolivia. As you know, it is a priority for many governments, and it's really important to find ways to decarbonize our energy matrix and reduce the carbon emissions. But in this transition, some new alternatives like the lithium batteries, like that are really used, for example, in electric vehicles, are relying on resources like lithium. And it is important to acknowledge that everything comes with a cost. So, and in this case, the coast is borne by the high Andean saline wetlands, where a lot of birds and Wilson's phalarope also relies heavily. Lithium is expected to, the demand of lithium is increasing in the last years, and is expected to increase even more in the next years. And the thing is that 80% of the world's reserves of lithium is in form of brine in the salares or these wetlands that are hypersaline wetlands in the Andes. And this is an area who has a very delicate hydrology. So lithium extraction requires a lot of water, so that can have negative impacts in the habitats. We are working specifically in an area that is called or known as lithium triangle. You can see in gray the definition of the area for the USGS, but in the right map you can see the area that we are mapping and working with partners to understand basically shorebird populations, where are the birds and how they distribute, what are the most important sites. We work very closely with the High Andean Flamingo Conservation Group. They are also monitoring flamingo population, and with the Wetlands International for information from other water birds. And basically what we are doing is trying to understand from first, where are the birds, how many, what are the important sites. On the other hand, we are assessing the scope of the lithium mining in the High Andean wetlands, knowing how many projects are already operating and where are distributed. This information is really hard to access. It's not publicly available or in a one database. So what we did with our partners is to create this database with all the companies and the projects that are already projected or operating in this area. And we have that information, so we work to understand what is the overlap between the lithium mining and the important sites for shorebirds and for Wilson's phalarope. And all this information is going to be available. We created a geoportal that is going to be launched very soon, and is going to be available for any person who wants to access to this information. And we're also working with local communities at 3 pilot sites because this activity is impacting the system, the ecosystems in the lake, but it's also impacting a lot local communities, indigenous people that are living on these sites. So we are also trying to understand what are the impacts and what are the ways that we can collaborate to protect these sites that are important for them and for the biodiversity. Okay, and now I'm going to change a little to explain one of our community in these efforts of building community. One of the main things is the International Phalarope Working Group. It was launched, or it was formed in 2019 in Mono Lake, and since then the group has grown a lot, and we are creating this amazing community across the hemisphere. The picture that you see here are from the last meeting that it was in February 2024 at Laguna Mar Chiquita. More than 40 people, like from different backgrounds, researchers, conservation practitioners, educators, managers from protected areas, different backgrounds. We all came together and discussed and what are the next actions that we need to take, what are the priorities that we need to take, going through the document, the conservation plan, using that as a guidance, but discussing between the group what are the next actions that we need to take at hemispheric level. One of the actions after this meeting was the creation of a steering committee to help the group to achieve the goals. And also we are creating these new subcommittees, trying to group people according to interest and try to find ways to support each other. For example, the tagging committee that I was mentioned is the brand new committee that we're creating, for example, for discuss specifically tagging and tracking phalaropes. And we're planning to create more new committees. So if any of you is interested in working with us and be part of this group, it's a very open group, very friendly group. Everybody is welcome to join us. Just let us know. And finally, I want to close my presentation talking about our efforts in education and community, building this community around the conservation of saline lakes and migratory species, and particularly Wilson's phalarope. One of the programs that we have is Experiencia Ambientalia. This program was launched in 2021. It is focused, of course, in saline lakes and ecology of saline lakes and shorebirds. It's aimed to focus on high school students, and up to date, more than 700 students from and teachers from more than 20 towns around Mar Chiquita Lake were part of the program already. So this program started very locally at Laguna Mar Chiquita with the intention to support the designation of the national park that happened 3 years ago. But the program was growing, and more and more students were part of the program. A lot of activities like shorebird camps, science fairs, bird watching excursions, bird ID, online lessons with researchers from the hemisphere from other saline lakes like our sister lakes. Students are exposed to many activities, and they have to develop community projects kind of to pass the course. So 62 community projects were already implemented in the Mar Chiquita area. But the program grew internationally, and from Mar Chiquita, now we're connected to other saline lakes, not only with our sister lakes, but other lakes across the hemisphere that are important for phalarops. We have a shared calendar of activities that we conduct. Many of them are online, but everything that we can do or coordinate to be in person at different sites at the same time, we also do that. And one of the biggest accomplishments was in 2024. We were able to support the first international exchange between students from these two sister lakes, Mono Lake and Laguna Mar Chiquita. So students from one lake were able to travel and visit Mono Lake, and vice versa. Mono Lake students were able to visit Laguna Mar Chiquita. And the idea is to create this long-term exchange program and build this community of young people that is interested in supporting shorebird research, conservation, and saline lakes research and conservation. We are expecting in 2025 to host Mono Lake students again at Laguna Mar Chiquita, hopefully in a couple of weeks. And the other program that we have is Conservation Academy. It's a beautiful program that is designed, in this case, for early professionals or students like students in the last years of their career, the undergraduate students. So far, 40 students have been graduated from the program. In 2025, we're implementing the 4th edition of this program, and it's basically aimed to foster connections among different students, with researchers, with professionals from the conservation sector, to explore opportunities and kind of try to get them interested and involved in the conservation world or in birds in the lakes. Some of the things that we try to do is to expose students to volunteer opportunities, internship opportunities, scientific events, international exchanges. For example, here one of the students was invited to participate in 2024 to the Great Salt Lake Issues Forum in Salt Lake City in Utah. And he was able to present a poster and share about the work the program is doing. Another student was a participant of the Ornithological Career Institute internship, and now is my colleague and is part of the Manomet team. And also we are trying to provide opportunities for fieldwork and for research. For example, in January, when the fieldwork was conducted at Laguna Mar Chiquita and this phalarope were tagged, students from Weber State University from Ogden, from Great Salt Lake, came to Mar Chiquita and were part of the field trip and participate in the field work. So, and we are expecting to be able to send students from Argentina to be part of field work at Great Salt Lake. So everything is aimed to connect and to create this international community, but also to get more people interested in these environments and these birds. Lastly, I want to acknowledge all these amazing partners that we are working with. Without them, we couldn't do all this work. This is possible only because of the power of partnerships. So thank you very much to all our partners. And that's the end of my presentation. Thank you very much for listening, and happy to take questions.
Thank you so much, Marcela. That was a really great talk and really interesting, and hopefully for everyone listening really did helped connect these regions, especially here. And I know that Connor and James had just an absolutely wonderful time down in Mar Chiquita this past January, both of whom will be presenting actually at the AFO meeting in Ogden, not on phalarope per se, but they got a really excellent experience working as part of this partnership. I would love to open things up to questions. So if you have questions, you can either type them in, or you're welcome to unmute yourself, probably is the best way, and ask your question.
I did see one or two in the chat. Looks like Tim wants to volunteer for surveys. I don't blame him.
Okay, any questions for Marcella? Okay, well, hearing none, I really appreciate you taking the time to be with us, Marcella. We are sad that we will have missed you here in Ogden, but Marcella will be defending her master's the week of our conference. And so we were glad that we were able to have her join virtually, even though we couldn't host her here in Ogden. So thank you again so much.
Thank you again
Thank
for
you,
having me.
Marcella.
Yeah.
And thanks everyone for joining us. We hope to see many of you in Ogden in just a few months here. But until then, have a great weekend. Enjoy the birds, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye, everyone. See ya.